You found the Backup Wrap-Up, your go-to podcast for all things backup, recovery, and cyber recovery. In this episode, we cover something that should be required listening for anybody responsible for protecting business data. The 10 essential features every backup system needs. There's way too many companies that think they have backups when they really don't. And by the way, when I say backup system, I mean the overall system, not just a computer system, because many times, backups are actually SaaS-based and things like that, right? Remember, no one cares if you can back up, only if you can restore. Let's make sure that your backup system has at least these 10 things that you need to get started. By the way, if you don't know who I am, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and I've been passionate about backup and recovery for over 30 years, ever since I had to tell my boss there were no backups of the production database that we had just lost. I don't want that to happen to you, and that's why I do this. On this podcast, we turn unappreciated backup admins into cyber recovery heroes. This is the Backup Wrap-Up. Welcome to the show. Hi, I'm W. Curtis Preston, aka Mr. Backup, and I have with me a guy who remembers to wear the shirt that I'm supposed to be wearing, Prasanna Malaiyandi. How's it going, Prasanna?
Oh my gosh, are you in my head? I literally was just thinking about that as I was looking. I was like, why does he never wear the shirt?
I'm in your head. Yeah, I you know what? I'm not even sure I know where the shirt is. I don't know if you know this. I can be a little bit disorganized sometimes.
Really? You? Really?
I know that comes as a great surprise, but we went through all this thing to get the shirts.
By the way, for the listeners, I was asking Curtis for 4 years.
Yeah.
To get swag to print shirt.
Yeah. We finally got a shirt, and he's wearing it. Both of us need to put our mic in a different place, though, so that you
could see the...
so that you don't cover up the... Yeah. By the way, no one has reached out to me for swag.
Listeners, if you want t-shirts, if you want something, please reach out to Curtis and let him know, because I would like some more swag.
Yeah, do Backup Wrap-Up socks.
Yes. Actually, I should say merch, not swag.
Yeah, merch. Yeah, swag is, merch is, you got to buy it.
Yes.
That's the difference. We're not giving away free stuff over here, people. All right. We're going to cover a lot in this episode, so we're going to cover it pretty high level. But we're going to talk about the 10 backup things that every business needs.
Could we call them fast facts?
What?
Fast facts.
Fast facts. Yeah, fast facts. The 10 backup things that every business needs. And the first one, 3, 2, 1. The 3-2-1 rule, which we've already...
listen, yeah.
Yeah, which we covered in the last episode, which is now really the 3-2-1-1-0 rule, yep. Right? 3 copies of your backup, 2 different media, one of which is somewhere else, one of which is immutable, and 0 errors because you did validation, which actually is going to be another one of our things, right? So if your backups don't conform at least to the 3-2-1 rule, then they're not.
You don't have backups.
Yeah, exactly, right. So the next thing is scheduled backups. So why does that matter, Prasanna?
Well, if you aren't doing frequent backups or scheduled backups, then you're probably avoiding or skipping or don't have a backup you can restore from, and you're probably not meeting the needs of the business. So you want it to schedule. Yeah. You don't want to have to go push a button, right? It should run automatically based on what you and the business have decided.
Yeah, if you're not doing scheduled backups, you're not really doing backups, right? You're gonna have to remember to do them, and so they should just run, right? Get humans out of the system as much as possible. So if you're not doing regularly scheduled backups, then again, I don't even know why we're here.
Well, I think it's also important. Automated is another keyword there.
Yeah,
right. It should not be, because I, for instance, do scheduled backups of my personal data, but it's me doing that manually every day or every month.
That's actually a really good point, right? I'm glad you brought that up. It needs to be automatically scheduled backups, right? Yeah. This should happen. And when we talk about another thing that we need to be doing all the time. That is a little thing called recovery testing or backup testing.
Yeah.
Backup testing or recovery testing. I guess the only reason we back up is so we can restore. No, I used to say a lot. No one cares if you can back up. They only care if you can restore.
Yep. And you need to make sure you're doing your recovery testing because you don't know if that backup is going to be successfully restored when you actually need it. The only way you know ahead of time is you have to do your testing. You might have forgotten to do part of an application backup. You might have forgotten a piece of your infrastructure you needed to back up as well in order to successfully restore down the road. The only way you know is you do the testing ahead of time.
Yeah, exactly. And I can think back in the day when I remember I was at a large cell phone manufacturing company, and we'd been backing it for months. And then we went to go do a recovery test. We found out that the tape drives they weren't so good at reading. They just knew how to write. You can't. Unless you do the recovery testing, you're not going to find that stuff out,
Yeah.
right? There's just we could spend hours and hours and hours telling you stories of bad things that happen when you don't do testing. You're only going to find out, what's wrong, right?
I think you did talk about this a few episodes ago, but your story about how there was a new compression feature.
Yeah, the compression feature
added to a thing, and you never tested it, and your restore from tape was ultra slow.
Yeah, it was ultra slow, and ultimately we found out that it actually wouldn't even work because of the way the feature worked. It was assumptions made that were just not true.
Yeah,
it was a really bad design. But again, you're not going to know that stuff until you actually do testing.
So the next one is going back to what I talked about earlier about why you needed sort of automated schedules, backup schedules, is you need to also define your recovery objectives.
Yeah.
And do you want to talk a little bit about that? Because I know people forget about this, or they think, oh, as a backup admin, I'm responsible for this. But I think it's important to sort of like really talk about this.
Yeah, this is one of those things where you really cannot design a backup system without recovery objectives, right? I mean, you can, right? you can define, but it's like you really have to define the recovery objectives up front, and if you don't define them up front and you don't agree to them up front, then you can't properly design the backup system. And so you end up sort of just doing what we always do, which is like, oh, we're gonna do it, we're gonna recover every day, we're gonna back up every day, we're gonna send it offsite, and we're gonna do the thing, and then you go to do the restore, and then you go to do the restore, and it works, but it fails from a perception standpoint, and that's because if you don't have recovery objectives, the recovery objectives that are in the mind of the bosses are going to be very different than the recovery objectives that are in your mind. You're like, hey, this was awesome. The restore happened. It only took 8 hours, and it succeeded, and we restored all the data. And you're feeling hunky dory, and then the bosses are chewing you out because they thought it was going to take an hour.
Yeah, and I think one other thing I want to touch on is, as a backup admin, am I the one who's coming up with these recovery objectives, or who is Curtis?
Yeah, good point. Yeah, it needs to come from the business, right? Any of these SLAs or recovery objectives need to start with the business. We don't want to lose any data, and we don't want to lose any time, right? So that's where we always start, right? A RTO and an RPO of 0. That's recovery time objective and recovery point objective of 0, and then you need to walk that back based on, okay, you can have an RTO and an RPO of 0. It's going to cost you $50 billion. And then they walk it back, right? So this is about setting expectations and also using those objectives to both define and design the backup system, but also to pay for it, right? Because it's really hard to get money for backups.
And we talked about this, I think, like 3 episodes ago.
Yes, we did. So the next is about isolating, backups from a security perspective. And we did just talk about this with the 32110 episode. We talked about immutable backups. There is a term that we didn't talk about, which is another really important term when we talk about isolating backups. You know what that term is, right?
The least privilege access?
No.
Patch management?
No.
MFA?
Keeping backups secure.
Oh.
I know. There's like 800 things you could be choosing. Air gap.
Oh, air gaps.
Yeah.
Yes.
But of course. And again, air gap backups, we can't really have air gap backups in the truest sense.
Yeah.
Because that technically means that it's offline and there is literally a gap of air. There is no connectivity from A to B. You can't really have that with modern backup and recovery design, but you can approximate it as much as you can, right? Again, just realize that from a cybersecurity perspective, that the threat actors are immediately going to go after your backups.
Yeah.
Right. And so you got to separate them.
So I was also thinking when you brought up this topic was thinking from sort of separating out. I know we talked about Active Directory, so sort of having something separate from a backup perspective, as well as network isolation if needed. So you're isolating your backup traffic from your production traffic, just keeping it isolated, walled off from everything else. So if something happens on your production network, it's not easy to get into your backup network.
Yeah. And the thing you mentioned earlier in your incorrect answer to my question it's least privilege, right? Using the concept of least privilege, giving each person the absolute least amount of privilege that they need in order to do their job in the backup system, and then isolating it as much as you can, encrypting backups also, right? In case somebody gets to them via some other source. Because remember, backups, they're not only used as a way to restore, but a threat actor can use them as a way to exfiltrate data from your environment, which is very, very bad.
So the next one, yay, my turn, is SaaS backups. Right. Make sure that you
SaaS
are...
needs backups?
Huh? No, if you haven't listened to our last episode, you should go listen to that on 32110. But yes, SaaS needs backups. So make sure you are backing up your SaaS applications. Don't just trust the vendor that they are going to be doing your backups or some form of backup.
Because again, if you just listen to our previous episode, they're not backing up your data. There are some vendors, Microsoft 365, Salesforce, that do offer a backup service that you pay extra for that is different. And I don't want to criticize any of those specifically because I don't know anything about the specifics of those products. What I will say is, just me personally, I would rather have the data on a third-party service rather than as part of the, that. And can you think of a company of why I might feel that way?
The company, why?
Of a story of a cloud event that we covered.
There were many cloud events we covered. I'm just thinking...
Specifically where the vendor had the copy of the data co-located with the data.
Oh, yes. OVH.
OVH, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Go look, this was a company that had made a number of very bad decisions. And since they were bad at they would argue that, look, we were doing a budget service and we made budget decisions based on the fact that it was a budget service, and I don't care, right? My point is they made a number of bad design decisions, and though they also made bad design decisions on the backup. And so that's where I was like, if it's a company that messes up, you want a backup that's from somebody that didn't mess up. And so that's why I would rather have the backup be with another company.
Yep. What's next?
Yeah, let's talk about documentation.
No one likes documentation, Curtis.
No one likes documentation, right? And the big thing here, I mean, you need to be able to describe how the different parts work. The real thing here is the concept of a run book, right? and that should be part of your disaster recovery plan, which is part of your cyber recovery plan, part of your incident recovery plan. That a person, again, this is a high bar to set, but a person that is technical and understands what buttons are, right, should be able to follow your run book and do the thing. Yeah. You shouldn't need the backup person or the DR person to be the one running the recovery. It should be somebody that is competent, should be able to look at it. And also there should be some sort of identity management system that would allow this person to then get into the places that they need to get into as well.
I was thinking about the hurricane that hit a tropical island story. And in that story, go back and listen to the episodes. Basically, a hurricane hit an island, wiped out the connectivity to the mainland. They needed to restore the data, but all the Active Directory and identity systems were in the mainland, so they couldn't restore the data. They had to fly people from the mainland back to the island in order to be able to actually do the restore. And great story. Go back and listen to the episode. The interesting thing, though, Curtis,
I thought what they did was actually they had to get connectivity back to the. I thought that's what they did.
So eventually, but I think they had to actually do.
I know they flew people.
Yeah.
I think in order for it to work at all, I think they used satellite connectivity to get access to the internet so that they could then access the thing on the mainland. I thought that's what happened.
I thought they had to fly in a copy of the Active Directory.
Did they?
Or was that another one?
Highly possible. Maybe I should go listen to the...
Yeah. Anyway, regardless, but I think this is where it becomes important that there are certain scenarios that local backup folks who are managing the site may not be able to handle. And so it is okay, if needed, to bring in specialists to deal with certain scenarios.
Which, again, is why you want to have documented procedures and run books so that those specialists can follow them and get stuff done.
So next on our list is retention policies. What are retention policies, Curtis, and why don't we just keep data forever? Come on, storage is cheap.
I have been at clients that kept data forever. In fact, I remember one. It was a financial firm in New York City, and they had a forever data retention policy, and they were very proud in talking about the number of features and ways in which things had to be added to Veritas Net Backup just because of them.
I don't know if that's something you should be proud of.
Yeah, right? Data retention should not be too short. I've seen I've seen on that end, the crazy end of forever. I also knew one of the friends of the pod, Stuart Little. He worked at a company where they were a client of mine, and the boss there had this like total opposite opinion, which was 2 weeks. His retention period for all backups was 2 weeks. This hurt my little backup heart, right? Because I can think of so many scenarios where 2 weeks is not enough. But he was just very adamant to not have backups subject to like e-discovery.
Yeah. Which makes sense, right?
Yeah, it makes sense. That was why. But I just felt 2 weeks was excessive. So somewhere between 2 weeks and infinity, you should be defining what your retention periods are.
But I think one thing to mention is not all your data has to have the same retention period.
Yeah. There's two things we need to talk about here. That's one of them, right?
Yeah.
Why didn't it have all the same retention?
Because some data you don't want to keep for a long period of times. Other data, for compliance reasons or other purposes, you have to keep for a long period of time. It doesn't make sense to keep all the data for the longest period of time you have to keep data for.
Right. And all data is not created equal. Yep. You don't back it up with the same frequency. You don't back it up with the same retention. There is data that is of high risk. Sorry. There is data of high risk in terms of high risk of lawsuits and things like that. The longer you keep data, the more data that you might be required to provide in some sort of e-discovery situation.
And it's also just cost too, right? If you kept everything forever, your costs are going to skyrocket from a backup perspective.
Yes. I don't care what method you're using to store your data, you're paying by the gigabyte in some way, shape, or form, right? And so if you store everything, then your costs are going to be significant. So that's one thing that you need to keep in mind, is that not all data needs to be stored the same amount of time, and you should be doing it based on the data type and the risks and all of these things, right? The other is that you should not be deciding this. Just like recovery times, you should not be deciding retention periods. This should absolutely not be a decision that the backup person is making. And it shouldn't be a technical person at all. This is a business discussion based on compliance, based on legal liabilities, based on costs. These are all business decisions that should not be coming from the backup admin. It should be coming from the people with the purse strings.
Yes, but if you're being told go back up this data and it doesn't have a retention period, I think it is up to the backup admin to say, hey, I don't see information I need in order to be able to do my job. Can you please tell me what the retention period is for this data?
Right. Yeah, I would I would say in the absence of being given that, I would set the retention period to like 7 years and then go back to them and say, hey, I've set this for 7 years. You might want to let me know something less than that, right? The next is, and again, some people, when we talk about 32110, and I say, well, this is sort of what defines a backup. Other people feel that without what we're about to talk about, again, you don't have backups, and that is monitoring and alerting, right? So if you're not, we talked about you should have a regular backup schedule. You should have defined recovery objectives. You should also have a system through which that the backups are doing the things that they're supposed to do.
But I kicked it off, Curtis, months ago. It should be fine running on its own, right?
This is definitely not set it and forget it. I will say that, right? I'll tell a funny story. We back before it was a lot. It was just hard to get centralized backup reporting back when I was doing this like 30 years ago. And we actually wrote custom Perl code that went and grabbed a bunch of backup statuses and created a web-based reporting system for, in this case, it was NetBackup. And again, I'm just going to say this is, mind you, this was a long time ago.
Back in the day.
And I did what I was told, but they asked for a what we called management view feature, and so that was if you went and you like push this button, all the backups went green. So in case management was stuck, so we had like the regular view, which is our view, and it would show you like each backup, and then there were like it was like a week of little green boxes. And then you could see the red boxes, and then you could see that there was red or green after the red, and but yeah, they asked for a feature where you could push a button and it made it look all better for management.
Oh boy!
And so that's monitoring, and then also alerting is like backup failures, things like a good modern system. You should be able to define your recovery objectives. And then it should tell you if you're unable to meet your recovery objectives, right? If you're unable to, if you say you have a 4-hour RTO, but you're not even able to complete backups within 4 hours, this is a problem. If you say you have a 4-hour RPO and you're not backing up at least every 4 hours, then you're not compliant to the objectives that you have specified.
Also, from a monitoring and alerting perspective, one of the things with ransomware is it goes and encrypts data. When it goes and encrypts data, you're going to end up with larger backups than normal. Yeah. If you have monitoring and alerting in place, maybe it could detect anomalies and say, hey, by the way, all of a sudden your 10 gigabyte nightly backup turned out to be 1 terabyte. What's going on?
Yep. And the other thing also is that's a great recommendation. The other also is, of course, that you're running out of storage.
Yeah.
Right. This is a problem. Right. And I will also say that a lot of reporting systems, they're really good on reporting what happened. They're not so good sometimes at reporting what didn't happen. There needs to be some aspect of your reporting system so that you can check the total inventory against the total backup inventory. Again, a compliance check to see that every system is automatically included in the backups.
Yep.
And how are we doing?
Which I think systems like VMware and other things make that easier because they do provide that inventory to the backup system typically. But I do agree, when you have physical systems, when you have SaaS applications, other things like that, it may be a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely.
And so wrapping this up, we have endpoint device protection. A lot of times on this podcast, or what a lot of people think about, it's like their database applications or virtualization environment. But you also have a lot of endpoints out there that you need to be protecting as well. And Curtis, I know you've brought up sort of cybersecurity. Do you want to talk about some of the issues that come up in endpoints?
Yeah, well, basically you have this incredibly powerful thing in your hand that has access, right? And also when we talk about things like biometric access and all that sort of stuff, right? You have all of that. Everything is relying on this device, right? And
Curtis is holding a phone in his hand for those who are not watching the video.
Thank you. And then also your laptop. Like my laptop has Touch ID built into it, right? So it's an incredibly powerful device, and also it's a device upon which we rely so much, right? And so you need a system through which you can recover that device if it goes, if things go poorly, right? Mm-hmm. And whether it's hacked, or you just drop it, in a sink somewhere, right? Shut up! I know. Shut up! I know what you're talking about. If you do something stupid, when I cracked my screen several years ago. I went and got it repaired, and then while walking to my car from the screen repair place, I tripped and I literally fell onto my phone and I cracked the screen again, and I just had to go back.
Curtis.
Yeah, that sucks. But anyway, the question you should ask yourself as to whether or not you need to do endpoint backup is whether or not your endpoint has data on it, right? Data that only resides there. Right. If you're using an iPhone or an Android, and that's what we're talking about from an endpoint perspective, and you're just using Google Photos or iPhoto, and that's what we're talking about, that is generally synchronized up to the cloud, right? But if you're using a third-party app to do photos of your job sites, because there are third-party apps that do photos of your job sites. Where are those photos? Are they only on the phone? Are they synchronized up to the cloud? Is there a system by which you can find out that all of that synchronization is working? Yeah. So you don't find out too late that these really important job site photos were only on Steve's phone, and now Steve's phone just got ran over by a truck because Steve got ran over by a truck. And poor Steve.
Yes, poor Steve.
Right? So that's the question. If you have endpoint devices where data is being created on those endpoint devices, as opposed to just using them, so 99% of what I do, almost 100% of what I do really, is
in the cloud.
I'm using some cloud service to do the thing. Like right now, we're using a cloud service to record this data. This recording, until I edit it, only sits in this, this little cloud service.
Is it backed up?
It's not. I'll just tell you that right now. During the interim, if we would be like those guys. What were those guys? The storage container people, the Life Uncontained.
Oh yes, Life Uncontained.
We would be like them. We would lose a couple of episodes, I think, if Squadcast decided to go Tango uniform. But what I was saying was that I use this, and then I'm going to use Descript, which is going to pull this over to Descript, and it's going to edit it, and that happens in the cloud. There is a local copy of Descript that runs on my laptop, but that's just
like a cache copy.
It's a cache copy, right? So if that's the way you're dealing with stuff, then you don't really have to worry that much about endpoint device, backup.
Yeah.
You need to worry about it from a device protection and data protection standpoint to access to those systems, because they could be used to access your critical data. But you don't. Yeah. If you're not creating data and storing data on that endpoint, then you don't have to worry about it. But if you are, then you should.
Yeah. Well, and also, everything you've mentioned, I agree with, only applies to backing up the data. It has nothing to do with endpoint device or detection and response, EDR tools and XDR and all the rest. Right? That's that you still probably need even if you are using 100% cloud services, because those endpoint devices are a gateway to your network.
Yeah. So EDR tools, which again we discuss in the ransomware book, Learning Ransomware Response and Recovery. Those are they're the canary in the coal mine, right? You most likely will be getting ransomware via an endpoint. So having EDR on your endpoints is a great way to find that before it becomes a problem. So
I wonder what other countries use instead of canary in a coal mine.
Are we the only country with coal mines? We're not the only country with coal mines. Maybe we don't have the. They don't have the. Surely they also used canary. What is a canary? Why do we say canary in a coal mine? Do you know the etymology of that, right?
Because miners used to take canaries in with them, and therefore if oxygen was running out or whatever else, if there was an issue and they were about to pass out, then the canary would pass out first or die.
Yeah.
And therefore they knew there wasn't enough oxygen, so then they would escape.
Exactly. I just had a memory of Zoolander. When Zoolander... He was when he worked in the coal mines, and he came out like one day, he goes, I think I got the black lung. Love that movie. All right. Well, there you go. 10 backup elements that you need to have in any company, right? Let's just review them again. The 3-2-1 rule, the regular backup schedule, backup testing and verification, defined recovery objectives, backup security and isolation, SaaS backup, documentation and runbooks, retention policies, monitoring and alerting, and finally, endpoint backup. This is good. I like this episode.
Fast facts. We should do it again sometime.
Fast facts. All right. Thanks, Prasanna, for being my canary in a coal mine. Bird brain. Being my bird brain.
Anytime, Curtis. For you, anytime.
All right. And thanks to everyone listening. That is a wrap. The Backup Wrap-Up is written, recorded, and produced by me, W. Curtis Preston. If you need backup or DR consulting, content generation, or expert witness work, check out backupcentral.com. You can also find links for my O'Reilly books on the same website. Remember, this is an independent podcast, and any opinions that you hear are those of the speaker and not necessarily an employer. Thanks for listening.